I'm Stephen, USSR Robinson, and you're watching Sport Icons. Papa!
Okay, so about 3 days ago, I watched a video, an upload from Blood Boxing, the old school Blood Boxing. Very, very cool guy. I like him a lot. He's a good historian, all that kind of stuff. Very, very opinionated, which of course I like very, very much. I really do. And I like when he just goes on these rages and tantrums. And yeah, there was once upon a time I used to wind him up just to do it. Anyway, he's a really cool guy, so go check out Blood Boxing. Now, this particular video that he uploaded, he was talking about an interview that Deontay Wilder done with his wife. And I thought, okay, cool. Mental note, I'll go give that a watch at some point. But of course, since then, I've got sidetracked. He's got like a new husky. My wife and kid convinced me to get one, so he's taken up a fair bit of my time. Anyway, I've seen a post from Michael Benson, the online TalkSport editor, and he gave a couple of quotes from that particular interview. Now, within that interview, so of course that prompted me to go, oh yeah, cool, I'll go give it a watch. So I've watched a good chunk of it. I haven't watched all of it. It's quite a long interview. Although I am surprised Deontay Wilder hasn't given his wife's channel a bit of a media shout out or something like that, because she's only had about 1,500 subscribers, maybe 2, something like that. Anyway, I'm sure he will. But very, very good interview. Audio was a little bit off between them, but again, I'm presuming that they're at the early stages of their YouTube channel and just getting to grips with everything that's going on. But I'm presuming it was at his house, and he came across very, very well. He really did. I enjoyed listening to him talking about the business and, of course, his family and his daughter with spina bifida and all that kind of stuff. Come across as a really, really cool guy, which is a real stark contrast to the impression that he gets or gives off when he's in boxing mode. When he's in boxing mode, he comes across as a bit of a dick. Ain't gonna lie, he does. Anyway, this is about the boxing part of it. And Deontay Wilder spoke about his loss to Tyson Fury. And this is what he had to say. I'm doing great. We didn't get what we wanted, but I think we got something even bigger out of it besides just a victory. No complaints at all. We just moved forward. This is just the beginning. The best is yet to come from me. I'm still in love with the sport of boxing. I do still have goals in the sport. I'm looking to accomplish the goals that I still have left. I broke my hand, so I'm in a healing process right now. After this, I'm looking to get right back into it. Deontay Wilder's statement on his wife's channel called Telly Talks. Link to that video in the description box. But as I said, go check out Blood Boxing as well. Blood Boxing, not the other goofy one. Anyway, now, as far as this particular statement and that is concerned, yes, of course, I did see him talk about all this as well. And it's good that he's not coming out with excuses, because obviously after the second fight, there were so many excuses. And I do feel that, listen, I've spoke to many, many boxers who were undefeated for quite some time, then suddenly they take a loss. The first loss is always the hardest. It really is. Now, arguably, it should have been the second loss. I do feel Tyson Fury won the first fight. I strongly do. But officially, that rematch with Tyson Fury was his first official loss. And with all the excuses that came out of it, I thought this is just reaching. I mean, it's quite natural to look for excuses for one thing or maybe two things that maybe didn't quite go right and whatever else. And I know it is a bit of a taboo subject, that if you come out with an excuse, the press, the media, the fans will just hound you about it. But the fact that he came out with so many, and of course, because of his toxic channel uploaders, we know who they are. Of course, I don't watch any of those ones, but they were just perpetuating the narrative, the lies, the glove gate, the spiked water, the turncoat trainer, the referee was drunk, and all these other kind of things. It was a list as long as a Christmas shopping list. It was absolutely ridiculous. But for me, that put him in very, very bad light. You can be a sore loser, sure, okay, be a sore loser, look to get him back in the rematch. But eventually, of course, the rematch did come, or the third fight is what it is officially. And he did give it his all. He did. And we do have to give him credit for the first 3-4 rounds. He did do very, very well, but he did blow a gasket. And I do think a lot of that was down to the weight. I think a lot of it was that he put like a lot of mental strain on himself to try and get back the win, which I do think didn't help him with all the excuses beforehand, because you've said all these excuses. Now you're going to have to get in there and show, okay, this is why I lost the first fight or the rematch. This is why I got battered. Now, I did say before the third fight, as much as me and most of you weren't calling for this third fight, because obviously we wanted the Joshua and Fury fight, and then Fury, he went off and yes, he's going to make the Joshua fight. He's not going to go fight Deontay Wilder. The contract's expired, and I've done interviews with Bob Arum about it, and the Joshua fight's definitely on. I lost all interest in the third fight. Now, had the third fight happened when it was supposed to have happened, of course, lockdown and the whole pandemic throughout the world hit, of course. But had the fight had happened immediately straight after when it was really supposed to have done, I don't think people would have really complained because of the contract. But because Fury said that the contract, and Bob Arum told me that the contract was null and void now, it went past the expiry date, we went, okay, cool, he can move on. So I wasn't looking forward to the third fight, but the third fight turned out to be pretty good. But I did say prior to it that I would expect a much better performance from Deontay Wilder, because again, let's be truthful, it couldn't get any worse, could it? It couldn't have done too much worse other than getting beat up and sparked out a little bit earlier. Okay, but in this one, he was doing new things. And of course, because he's got Malik Scott as his head trainer now, Malik Scott, he's been part of his training camp and for quite some years. Of course, he's a previous opponent as well. And I still maintain that Malik Scott took a dive. Did he? Well, officially we don't know, but it did look like it. But he seems to be implementing new things. He was doing the body shots. He came out in round number 1 and was going to the body, which is something I've always said, that to beat Tyson Fury, that's what you do. And it does seem that whenever Tyson Fury fights somebody, he always seems to find headhunters. And somebody who's as elusive and skillful as Tyson Fury, it's quite difficult to land flush on him. It is very, very difficult. But at the same time, I think Wilder, as much as he did put on the extra weight, I don't think that helped at all. He was doing the right thing. At times, he was going to the body, and at times, he was on the back foot because Fury felt that Wilder couldn't fight on the back foot. Wilder is not a great back foot fighter. He's not. But he lulled Fury into a sense of false security, if that's probably the right word to call it, where he was starting to back up. Fury was like, okay, I got him. Pressed him forward, left himself right open for a straight right down the pipe, right on the forehead. And it shook Fury's body. It really did. If you're watching in slow motion, you can see the ripples just go straight away down Fury's body. Okay, but he hit him straight in the forehead, and where Wilder says that he's nursing a broken hand, that's probably the moment where it happened. You know, right on the forehead, that's really gonna hurt your hand. It really is. But either way, as far as him making a comeback, great. There's quite a few fights I want to see him in. There really is. Do I want to see him fight Fury for a 4th time? No, not really. But at the same time, if it demands it, if Wilder can go get one of the other belts or all of the other belts, and then there's cause to see that fight, then of course, yes, definitely. But at the same time, there are fights out there I want to see him fighting. Obviously, he's a PBC fighter with Al Heyman, Premier Boxing Champions, and there's fights within that stable I'd like to see. Andy Ruiz Jr., of course, being top of the list when it comes to that one. So I personally would like to see Deontay Wilder fight Andy Ruiz Jr. But for example, if not, whether Joshua beats Usyk in a rematch, whether he doesn't, I'd still like to see him fight Joshua at some point. Dillian Whyte, all going well. Hopefully he fights Tyson Fury coming up next. Dillian Whyte, win, lose or draw, I'd still like to see Dillian Whyte and Deontay Wilder have it out. I really would. So it's quite a few fights. Well, I'd be interested in the Usyk fight. Maybe. I'll be interested to see how Usyk handles him and how he handles Usyk. That'd be quite interesting, to be honest with you. But either way, I thought that he come across very, very well in this interview. Of course, he's talking about how he got something bigger out of it than just a victory. Yes, he got like a lot of props out of it because he did show a lot of heart. He did gas very, very early. I do feel Fury got a little bit nervous of engaging too much with him. Maybe Fury wasn't sure about his own engine, but Wilder was there from the taking from about halfway through round 5, maybe round 6 if I'm being a bit more generous. But Fury just seemed to really hold back at times. Don't get me wrong, he was landing some pretty good punches. Ultimately, he did get the stoppage in round number 11. But the way that Wilder, he did take some big shots. Of course, he got dropped a couple of times himself in that fight. He did pick himself up, as most boxers do anyway, to be fair. And he just accepted the beating. And he wanted to go out on his shield. That's what he said about the rematch. And he did get to do that for the third one. So, yes, in that way, his stock has gone up. He's got out of it a lot more. Of course, there's a financial gain as well. Hopefully, he put to bed the excuses from the second fight. Hopefully, at some point, he does come out. I mean, maybe he said it in this interview. I said, I haven't watched all of it. I've got about half hour, 45 minutes-ish left of it, which I will get around to finishing. Maybe he does address that at some point. Maybe he does and says, hey, listen, I was just in a bit of a bad place. I was looking for excuses. This rotten fan base uploaders that I've got out there. I'm not talking about his fans, by the way. I'm talking about his content creators, these YouTubers who just perpetuate lies and narratives and Lord knows what in favour of Deontay Wilder, hopefully comes out and says, listen, this lot, they gave me the excuses, and because I was suffering, because I was hurting about what happened, I took those excuses. I shouldn't have done it. And yes, we put that Tyson Fury saga to bed. We move on to other things. Maybe at some point we can get a full fight, if Fury's still got the belts, if I can get another belt, all that kind of stuff. But for now, of course, wish him speedy recovery. And as much as to be honest, it's never been Wilder that I've ever disliked. It's always been his hardcore fanatical fans. Them ones are just absolute. I mean, they've been running around the YouTube section and social media like a plague. They really have, with the complete utter rhetoric garbage that they've been coming out with. And I'm not just talking about the excuses from the second fight, but of course that was a big chunk of it. But it's them people that make us look at Wilder and go, I actually want you to lose just to shut this lot up. And that's pretty much what it was with Wilder. Either way, I'm sure that when he gets back into boxing mode, he's probably going to piss me off again. We'll address that when that time happens. But either way, good interview. Big props to him. And of course, his wife, I'm presuming her name is Telly? Anyway, link to that video in the description box. Drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next video.